Howdy friends, Pete here. As you've likely heard, Deo Odolecki, the founder of Greater Cleveland Cop Block, is now caged in Parma, just on the outskirts of Cleveland. Last night I spoke with Ademo Freeman about Deo's situation. Ademo has been on the ground in Ohio and very active with Deo in and around the Cleveland area, and I thought none better than Ademo to give us a recap of what's going on and potentially how we can help Deo. So without further ado.
Deo Odolecki, Doug Odolecki, is the founder of Greater Cleveland Cop Block as well as Ohio Cop Block, and has also assisted a number of other folks start their Ohio-based offshoots. More recently, he's become more active as a Cop Block Network contributor as well as taking over the duties of the COPWATCH store. As well as all that, about 2 years ago, Deo started facing some clear harassment from the Parma Police Department, Parma, the suburb of Cleveland in which he lives, to the point where every time he would film them, there would be some sort of, jaw-jacking or intimidation, another squad car coming up, parking close to him, and so on. All that can be seen at his YouTube channel, Greater Cleveland Cop Block on YouTube. Yet none of that ever got physical or ended in arrest until about 2 years ago, almost 3 actually to the day, when Deo was out cop blocking a police OVI checkpoint, as they're called here in Ohio. For those unaware, cop blocking a checkpoint is sometimes rather simple. You hold a sign, says turn now, police ahead, or checkpoint ahead, and you would stand at the last available intersection for the motorist to turn to avoid the checkpoint. That's exactly what Deo was doing in 2013, and the police, upset with the, in my opinion, effectiveness of Deo's sign, meaning not getting many motorists coming through their checkpoint, which means they were not getting as much revenue for things that they would normally ticket you for, like not having a license, failure to register, etc. And instead of the OVI aspect that they cloak it in. But upset about that, a couple police officers from Parma approached Deo and said he had to remove the sign, at least a bare minimum, take out or cross out the words turn now. Deo refused. They cited him for obstruction of justice and stalled that case really long, which is important. I think that was a slight mistake in the strategic part as far as the court system is concerned, is that a motion maybe to ask for a speedy trial or drop it for lack thereof might have been valuable in this point, because they really dragged their feet on it, because in my opinion, this is the arrest of Deo's that is the most sound that he could have beat. And I think they were trying to entrap him into another case to begin with. Before I talk about the second time Deo was arrested, I've been in Cleveland with him periodically throughout last summer. And I know that when we were filming Parma Police on a couple of occasions, that they would try to escalate the situation. And the best example I can show you that is there is a video where I held a F the police sign during a traffic stop that I filmed. And on the face of that video, everyone says that, I'm being disrespectful to cops and this isn't accountability based. But if you watch from the start of that video, Deo and I found that cop doing a speed trap. His interaction with us is more standoffish, and we're like second class people to him. And then in fact, when I was trying to explain to him maybe some alternatives to his current choice of employment, he drove off to catch a speeder, which is a victimless crime, which is something we were just talking about. And in my personal opinion, he did that despite. And so escalating the situation. And then we went and filmed it, and he told the driver some things. And so it escalated to the point where I held the sign. And I believe the Parma police officer was escalating it because he wanted myself or Deo more particularly to get some sort of catch-all charge. Move forward from that incident about a month or two, Deo is coming home from lunch down the street at one of his favorite restaurants, notices about 10 to 15 emergency type vehicles and personnel standing around a bridge. So he starts filming like he would and walks up and realizes that there's some Parma police officers there and some, mother and some, teenagers. And immediately the police come at him and tell him that he can't film because it's a minor, which is a lie. They admit it in court that it was a lie, and they know that they can lie to you. When that didn't work, they asked Deo to go across the street. He swore at them and said things he didn't like, but he ultimately complied. And as he was walking across the street, still continued to cuss them out. You know, nothing like insane, but, you know, cussing nonetheless. And that's when the police then reapproached him and arrested him, but put 3 more charges on him. At the first checkpoint, he got obstruction of justice. At the bridge incident, he got obstruction of justice, disorderly conduct, and interfering with a medical emergency. And what was going on at the bridge is that allegedly a teen was claiming to want to commit suicide by jumping off the bridge. But when Deo arrived, 4 or 5 officers were around the kid. He was not on the bridge anymore. He was sitting on the guardrail. It was, in my opinion, and from my understanding of the testimony of the officers, a nearly completed scene at the time of Deo's arrival. So I don't know how he's interfering with the medical emergency, et cetera, et cetera. Again, both these videos can be viewed at COPBLOCK.org and or Greater Cleveland COPBLOCK's YouTube channel. But subsequently, Deo ended up going to trial about 7 months after the second incident, but they combined the 2 now. And so the first case, which in my opinion is a slam dunk case, by asking a guy to remove "Turn Now" from a sign, is like asking Pizza Hut to remove $5 lunch sale from their sign. You know, it would be pointless, and it's, you know, it's a restriction of a natural right, in my opinion, or even their status rights. Anywho, and so they combined them and then painted the whole trial was more of a, you know, it was a character trial. It wasn't about the law or whether or not Deo has a right to either film police or, you know, stand on the corner with a sign. It was more that Deo is a bad person who harasses cops, who needs to be taught a lesson, that was keeping them from doing their jobs. And we understand that they need to be able to do their jobs, right? They have to be able to do their jobs. You know, the jury was asked that multiple times in selection, which was really weird. And so even though it was perceived the judge was being fair in the beginning of the trial, all that doubt was taken away at the end when Deo, when she gave Deo not only the max on all 4 charges since he was found guilty by the jury, but she ran them consecutively, which is unheard of normally for Class B misdemeanors, meaning less than a year in jail is what you can face on these. Less, or 6 months or less, excuse me, is what you can face on these charges for Class B misdemeanors. So normally if you like rob 5 liquor stores or break into 5 houses, they will give you 5 burglary charges consecutively, because it's actually more common when there's victims, although it's not guaranteed either. But with misdemeanors, they're almost always, and in fact Ohio law even states that at sometimes they have to be. And so that's another basis of Deo's appeal, that all the charges on the one day, the 3 charges of the one day, on Ohio law, since they are misdemeanors, may have had to been run consecutive or concurrently. But that just goes to show that the judge and the prosecutors, it was all about protecting the boys in blue and their feelings and or their way of business, which is, you know, generate revenue by violating people's rights and or, you know, extorting, harassing them.
Like you said, protecting the boys in blue. I thought of that earlier today when I was reviewing your post about Deo's situation, and I noticed that both his the address you noted for him to receive mail, which is the Parma police cages, and the place where the person in the black dress said that Deo was guilty of some things, even though he hadn't caused any victims, and she therefore said he had to be caged. The addresses for both where that justice was supposedly wedded out and where Deo is now caged is the same. It's like the same building, and so like it just, there's no you know, separation. These guys all work for the same ends, just to protect each other and grow their own spheres of influence.
Yeah. The first day she like got Deo a coffee, and he was like, "Wow, you know, like what other judges gotten you a coffee?" You know, and I was like, "Well, you might just want to wait," but you know, you hit the nail on the head there. The courthouse, police department, and jail is all one building, and they're literally like top level, mid level, bottom level, and it's sickening when you like know how it all works and you look at it like a machine. So
yeah, so you noted the like, I guess I'm curious, what do you think could have been done differently? And I know it's, we won't ever know, but you mentioned that maybe if Deo would have pressed to have his first threat levied against him dismissed or have a speedy legal land venture, that may have then removed it. Is there anything else you think?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say that I don't, like, I try not to say like this was done wrong or this was that. I know I do it to myself in my own self-reflections, but at first I just like to say, like, we can only learn from things, right? And so what could we learn from this whole thing as it transpired? Like, first, I think Deo made a mistake the day that he filmed on July 29th, by recording only to his phone and not utilizing either Bamboozer or Cell 411. Now, Cell 411 wasn't a reality on the day that happened, so he may have been using that, but Bamboozer most certainly, because it took 4 or 5 months after that happened to get the video, and at that time, there wasn't much that could be done. Both his cases had already been joined. The trial date was even set. And as you and I can attest to, Pete, when you get that footage out right away and early, and was just an example yesterday with Brett Sanders, you can get reactions that are more favorable to you quicker. The state's hooks are not setting to you. They haven't got a couple cases in, the ball rolling, and they can bail out a lot more easy.
Yeah, they don't have the comfort of having months of time to frame the reality of what they claim went down and to prevent you from doing the same with that objective record.
And they're also less invested. So, like I mentioned yesterday, Brett Sanders was arrested down in Texas, of Texas COPBLOCK, and we were told when he was first arrested that he would see a judge the following day, even on Sunday. But yet he ended up being released at, like 5 or 6 hours after that, and some on the ground noted the call flood and pressure. So he utilized Cell 411, which you can get at getcell411.com, and then that allowed other people in his cells to get the video out, which in this case was myself, and then produced that video in a format that folks could then make the decision with the information to call and act on it. And so had Deo done that back in July, they might not have gotten to the point to combine his two cases, which means at the trial they might not have been so effective at painting him as this police harasser bad boy. And so that's one thing I think that I've learned from that, is that definitely utilize the live stream features that you have, if you have them. As far as, well, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so I guess what would you add on, like, in addition to the tactical suggestions that you've noted, like the encouragement to stream and particularly to use Cell 411, which is now free on Android and iOS. But what is like one of the takeaways you see, or how would you see this through like a non-status lens? Like, because Deo was supposedly said to be guilty of all these things, obstruction of justice, but in reality, it was him who was like victimized by these, who had his rights violated. His property was stolen. He was kidnapped and caged. And I guess do you have any takeaways? Has this case like caused you to think any different, or just reinforce your thoughts on that sort of an angle?
Oh yeah, it's definitely reinforced, because I've been where Deo's been, and I saw some of this coming. If you read Deo's first blog from jail, he talks heavily about how this just shattered all idea that the system had any ounce of right in it. And as I had mentioned earlier, he talked to me, he had a 2-day trial. And so on those first 2 nights after the case, like, these good points were made. And, the judge was being friendly to our cause here. And, at the end, when she had her closing, I didn't touch on this exactly, and I'm glad that we brought it up. She said things like, I cannot protect the police forever, but I can for a little while, and then gave Deo the max sentence. And so everything before that was, a facade. It was all fake. It was a curtain. It was smoke and mirrors. And so, for me, I knew that. I've been in that end. I've seen it a number of times. I saw it when he was picking the jury, and he was asking the jury questions like, police should be able to have a police checkpoint, right? And that's a major leading question. Like, I actually wrote a note. This is my first strike in court before I got kicked out, and gave it to Deo's defense team because I was telling him to object to that, because he just tainted a whole jury pool, because this whole thing isn't about checkpoints. And he just asked them all if police should always be able to do their job, you know, and that was a major penalty.
Wow. So the person that supposedly adjudicated the justice there, who said she can't protect the police forever, but at least for a little while, you think about it, like in both the two incidents that you named, Deo holding a sign at a checkpoint to warn drivers, and then Deo seeing a number of badge-wearing folks, you know, who subsist on stolen money and threats and things like around some folks. So Deo chose to film the situation. So in both of those cases, he was taking it upon himself to look out for strangers in his community. But in fact, this person has the gall to say that she can't protect these people, you know, as if Deo's a bad guy.
Right. Well, yeah. And so not only that, but yes, like in both the videos,